Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Ignorant generation. Book of Judges, chapter 2, verse 10.
Verse 10. 2:10 says, and all that generation also were gathered to their fathers. Excuse me. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work which he had done for Israel.
Now that verse is scary. Number one, it says that an entire generation died. Now, that is the first danger that this verse presents us with. An entire generation dying. It's the greatest danger of a generation is having its previous generation extinct. You find yourself in a generation without reference, an existing reference. Now, in case you don't understand, let me demonstrate it to you. By the time you are 2 years, all your relatives are no more.
2 years. By the time?
2 years of age, and you have no father, you have no mother, you have no grandmother, no grandfather, no uncle, no auntie. This verse and all that generation also were gathered to their fathers, all. So you find yourself in a world, okay, where there is no relative. It's an entire generation gone. That is the first danger that this verse communicates. And it's quite an impossibility, by the way. It is difficult to believe that you are almost born in a vacuum. You have no single relative. The only relative that you have are siblings of your generation. You have no person in the past generation. So, the trees that you see around you, or in urban areas, the buildings that you see around you, and the cars and the automobiles, etc., whatever you see, even the technology that you have in your hand, isn't it? You don't know the story behind it, how it came. Why? Because the entire generation is dead. Are you guys following? Yes. And all that generation was gathered to their fathers. And now listen to the text. And there arose another generation. Now, we have one generation gone, and another generation arises. Now, this generation that has arisen has no reference, has no frame of reference. Okay? But they have to live within what happened and what the other generation that they never met did. Have you been to a funeral where people are telling the children of the late that the late owed them, or they owed the late. Isn't it? And these children have to deal with the debts of the late. And there is no single document
to that effect.
To that effect, and you have to deal with that. The only document that you have is the one that the debtor carries. Here's the signature of your father. He took a loan from us. And you didn't know a single thing. Then before you know it, there is another woman there with children. And they are saying that these children are for the late. In case you doubt, we can do a DNA. And indeed, when you do the DNA, they are your siblings. And you have never had anything. And before you deal with that properly, there is someone who has a land title of where you call the home. So you don't know what to do, but you are within a lifestyle, you are within events, you are within the historical framework of someone who is not even here, who told you nothing by the time he lived. And even when he left, you didn't know nothing, but you have to deal. And there arose another generation after them. Now, who did not know the Lord, number one, and did not know the work that he had done for the other generation. Now, this generation that is born has nothing to do whatsoever with God. But how is that possible, by the way? But let me pause and ask you, what did your father, what did your mother tell you about God? Let's start with that. Do you remember anything that your father or your mom told you about God? Because I normally share mine. My mother told me as a young boy that when you grow up, you must worship the God of Rwanda. Because God spends the daytime, he spends it in other countries. But his place of abode and where he sleeps is in Rwanda. Because my mother was in Rwanda, isn't it? Now, my Munyankole father didn't tell me anything. So I grew up seeking to worship the God of Rwanda. It was later when I studied theology that I understood that the God of Rwanda is a small God. He is a small God. He has a house in Rwanda. That's where he sleeps.
He even sleeps.
Yes. You see? So what did your parents tell you about God?
Is there. Then my father told me.
Your father told you.
That because one time he told me, what do you want? Then I told him, I want to be happy. Then he laughed at me and he told me, you want to be happy? Well, what makes you think you came here to be happy? You did not come here to be happy. You came here to serve your master, the one who brought you here. And from that day on, I realized that my master, who is God, is the one that I'm supposed to serve. Albeit I refuse to agree to his gods, but for me, the one who have been worshipping and whom I've been convicted to look for since childhood, that God is the one that I worship.
Gentlemen, an entire generation died. And the next did not know their God and what he had done for them. Let me ask another simple question. Because today I'm not even going to take a lot of your time. Don't worry. What did your mother or father tell you about work? What did they tell you about work? That they are supposed to work for you, or you are supposed to work for yourself?
Supposed to work for yourself.
How many people are blessed that they were told that you must earn anything that you have, or you to have in life? Now, that was a blessing. Then how many of you were told that you must be given? And people must work for you. Okay, we are in this generation, isn't it? What are the values that the past generation passed on to us that we are still operating? We have a generation who is in a land that was conquered by the mighty works of a particular God. And the guys in that land did not know that we are here because a certain God gave us this land through miraculous works. They have nothing to do with that God. Question: can they keep that land?
No, they can't.
Do you know how you got where you are?
I'm learning.
Do you know how you got where you are? Where are you, by the way? The problem with this generation is a generation, okay, within a destiny, and they don't know how they got there. Matters worse, they don't even want to know. This is the problem with this generation. Guys are in Canaan, and they don't know the God who got their fathers in Canaan. They don't know him. Number one. Number two, they do not even know the works that he did to get them there. Do children at school understand what we go through to get school fees?
Do they?
Do they? They don't. Isn't it? Now, if they knew, would they be behaving like they behave in school? Now, this is the justification of their behavior.
As a parent, you want them to know, the biggest question you ask is, will they understand? Do they have capacity to?
But how will they understand if we don't make them understand as soon as possible? You see, my son has been sick, and we spent like 2 days on sick bay. So immediately he gained his strength. He told me that I want to go back to school. Then I said, how do you feel? He said, I'm okay, I want to go back to school. Then I said, okay, fine, you go to school. And then as we went, he told me that my son was abnormal, and I need another pair. You know how much I bought the first pair? 60,000 shillings.
What the mother?
Okay? So, yesterday I told him that I do not have money. What we're going to do, there are others here. These nigina things. Those are the ones that I'm talking about. Even the other ones are also benigina. They are not special.
60.
So, I took him. Then I told him, so pick the one that we are going to buy. The brother had the audacity to tell me that there is nothing. Not because there wasn't something that fits him. I know, there was nothing of his style.
Of his standard.
And his standard. Listen.
The former bedridden.
Yes, the former bedridden. So, I told him, now that you have nothing here, then you'll have to go.
Without.
Without.
That would be me.
he told me that I better go without.
I better go without.
Yes. That then he told me, you see, that is, a man has to have standards. That's what divine told me.
Oh my goodness.
Then I told him,
On whose account?
you are very right.
Right,
But
that's
you
the
must
bad.
finish that sentence. That sentence goes like this, divine. A man must have standards he can afford. Can you afford? Because now that I do not have the money, can you please go and buy your own standards?
Was that understood?
Do I have an option?
He has to
My own alternative is to communicate to this generation. We have a generation that thinks that a man must have standards, whether he can afford
or no.
those standards or not. A man must have standards. Am I the only struggling parent here? Because you know when you buy food at home and the boys, the generation, has the audacity to tell you, we don't want rice. Really? Does this generation understand that it is a blessing to have muogo? They are audacious to say, we don't want cassava. The problem is not that there is no food. The generation is telling us that the issue is not food. What kind of food?
Yet they can't buy for them.
Do you see where we are?
The audacity.
The audacity of this generation. So, I put this guy on a board and I told him, you said you want to go to school? There you go. I had 10,000 shillings. I gave him 10,000. And then he shook his head. Then I told him, before this guy set off, I told him, you wait before you move. I need to talk to this guy. Then I told him, Divine, like you are shaking your head, I promise you, your children will be shaking their head when you do what I am doing to you right now. And I told him, you actually pray so hard that you even give them 10,000.
Agenda kuchera.
Off the generation went. You people, let me ask a question. Does this verse communicate to us? And all that generation also were gathered to their fathers. So this boy went to school without sandals. Because where we went to bar, there was no his style and his standard. So this fool has a standard.
Can you imagine?
This is the generation. The generation, the only thing he knows about standard is the spelling of that word and the pronunciation. I told him, do you understand what it means to have a standard? You must be in capacity to afford it. So these days we take children to school and they tell you, I don't want that school. A generation that tells us, before you tell me that you don't want that school, do you know anything about education? Do they?
We understand the school, not education.
Now I wished I had time to go in that, but I want to point you to another problem. How come the children of the worshippers of the God of Israel did not know anything about the God their fathers worship?
It means their fathers did not worship.
Do you guys understand? Do you see that the danger is not with this generation?
No.
What? How come that your children do not know anything about your God?
There was no transmission.
There was no transmission. Now, What we are dealing with here is ignorance in both generations. The first generation was ignorant about the future. The second generation was ignorant about the past. And the two are justified, have a justified ignorance. Why don't you know about the past? Because the people who were in the past never told me. So this generation had children, and they never anticipated that this is the next generation, and they never prepared them for the future.
No, I would. One time, I long ago, me and I was like, I started speaking about the things I wanted to do for my children, how I wanted my family to be, and all that. Then my uncle laughed and evil laughter, and then he was like, "You, what, where will you get the capacity for all that?" I was angry, but at the same time I was like, challenge accepted. I must ensure that I become one who is able to do these things for my children.
Do we now that there's you can.
I had a difficult conversation with my son, three of them yesterday, where I was telling them not to hate me, but look at my failings and faults, and hate those. I was also talking about them about sexuality and sex, because they are above 22 years now. It was a difficult time.
Yes.
But I'm happy I had it with them.
But you had, because you are now conscious, you are not ignorant about the future. Do you get the point? Any parent who is not ignorant about the future is going to start talking to their children about the future. Because you don't want another generation that looks like you. I keep telling Divine, I don't want another Isaiah White to win Mutabazi manifesting in you. It has to end with me. The things that you are here to thrive and succeed in the areas I have failed. You are not here to emulate me. We need to end this.
How?
Now, you need to learn from my failures.
That's the how.
And not learn from your failures.
Oh.
The problem, we have a generation that has no frame of reference. And all it is going to do is to learn by experience. Now, it is only idiots that learn by experience, their own experience. How can you worship the God of Israel for over 500 years? Because by the time we're talking about here, they spent 400 years in Egypt, slavery. Isn't it? Judges chapter 2 verse 10 is 300 years of dwelling in Canaan.
300
years. And a generation is in Canaan and has no clue about the God of Israel. By the way, let me ask you, do you know how your father got your land, where you were raised?
Yes.
Do you know how he got that land?
Yes. Yeah, I know.
I understood.
Do you understand? Do you know how he dealt with the people around there? Do you know who the enemies of your father are?
Are you still saying yes?
Do you know what your mother had to deal with
Yes.
throughout her marriage and raising you up? Yes, you claim that you are brothers and sisters, but do you know how brothers and how sisters you are? Do you know how?
How brothers?
Was that information disclosed to you? Do you know how many people don't like you and their reasons of not liking you in that family? And there arose another generation that was ignorant. of the past. Because it was raised by another generation that was ignorant of the future. I can assure you, 100 years from now, amen, this world will be looking for someone who can do it by themselves.
Come again?
100 years from now, if not 50, this world will be desperate, okay, for someone who can do it by themselves. Anything. They can write, they can pick up a pen and write their name. A very simple thing like that is going to be no more.
You're right.
This world will be looking for someone who can prepare a meal
Themselves.
This world, in fact, today, universities are looking for someone who can write a page of 800 words, their own.
Like this generation is looking for organic food
Do
now.
you guys understand what I'm talking about? That if you give your child an assignment, you go and write a story of your own words. 800 words. In fact, a Microsoft page is 500 words. Isn't it? Or 600. Write one page using your own words. Because today with ChatGPT, you don't have that. Do you?
Gemini.
Do you have that? Now all you need to do, you cannot even write. You can't even type using this technology we have. People are shifting from typing to dictating. You don't have time to type, so you stand before a computer and start talking. And the computer will be doing what? The rest. What we have in restaurants, don't we have robots? So we shall have a generation that doesn't know that you can carry a cup from the kitchen to your living room. Why? It will be a generation that only commands water, and then a machine brings water. Take away the cups. Do the dishes. Then they will be in bed saying, bed sheet.
22 temperature, 22 degrees.
And the greatest, okay, next pandemic will be a cyber pandemic. Where the will stop.
Hey. Hey.
And if it stops, someone has never washed a cup. Will they wash the cup?
Nature kijja kutta abantu.
And they will start dropping.
Dead.
Because it is a generation.
Why are they dropping?
Because they can't wash a cup, they can't prepare a meal. And the KFC is closed. And there arose another generation that was completely ignorant. The only thing that this generation knows how to operate is a video game. And they are stressed. Have you ever taught your children to sustain a conversation? No. Do they even have a conversation? They're always on their phones. Isn't it? And they have 5,000 followers, friends. They're called friends on social media.
Friends.
Yes. People who have a following of 1 million on social media, are we together? Do not have a personal friend they go out with for dinner. and they have no activity. The only activity they do is in the gym. Are you guys following? This is the generation. Where do people meet? In restaurants, in gym. Where else? On the way.
Church.
Which church? Church is online. Where is church? Okay, fine. Let's talk about church. How many people go to church and make new friends? People go to church and sit in their pews, listen to, drive their cars away. Is that fellowship? It is a generation that is going to come now. Or is it going to come or it is already here?
We're already living it.
So what are we telling our children? Someone opened Deuteronomy 6:49.
6:9.
6:49.
6:49. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul.
Continue.
And with all your might. And these words, which I command you this day, shall be upon your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk in the way.
What is that guy saying? Why are the children into the picture? Why doesn't God speak to one generation at a go? Why does God want a generation to be the one talking to another generation? But the problem in this text of Judges chapter 2:10, the elders were complacent. They were complacent. And the next thing they did, they just assimilated. They assimilated with the surrounding culture. Now, let me tell you something. In Uganda here, the Banyarwanda who are my mothers and the Banyankole who are my fathers always remind us not to behave like those who are not like us. And we don't eat fish, not because fish kills. We don't eat fish because we are Watusi and we are Bahima. It is the only reason. There is no any other reason. We don't eat pork. Our only reason why we don't eat pork. You are a Mutusi, you are a Muhima. We do not marry anyone who is not of our side. What is the only reason? They are not Watusi, they are not Bahima. That's the only reason. There is no any other reason. We do not care whether a Nani Muhima and Nani Mutusi is a good wife, well behaved, and very beautiful. Standard. Is he or she a Mutusi or a Muhima? No. The rest do not matter. Now, is that exclusive to the Bahima and the Batusi? Have you met a staunch Muganda? Have you met a staunch Muganda? And because for them they even have, like the Batusi and Bahima have a term, Abairu, Abahutu, isn't it? The Baganda also have a term for the Nani Baganda, Banyoro, Banamawanga. True or false? Exactly. Now, question. You do not water that down easily. Let us first of all ask what they are doing. What are they doing?
They are avoiding an ignorant generation.
They are avoiding an unassimilated generation that does not understand who they are. Now we have a generation that doesn't know who they are. You find someone is called Nachiwala and cannot pronounce Nachiwala. When you ask them, what is your name? Nachiwala. Nachiwala. Then you are like, God, it is natural. Natural. Then because they can't pronounce that, they start now initials in these names. Nax. Nashua. That's the lost generation. These are people who do not know who they are. Someone is Nakanwaji, now is Nwaj. It is a lost a generation that does not know who they are. It is assimilated with something they don't understand. They have become a generation without an identity. And any generation without an identity is no generation. Because it can be anything. If someone can't pronounce their name Nachiwala, the Ugandan name, isn't it? Why do you have issues with them when they identify as girls and they are boys? You thought it was here. They don't know who they are. Then if they say that I am a boy, if a girl says that I am a boy, is there any problem? Because first of all, they don't know who they are. It is a generation that has no any sense of value. So a man can wake up one morning and say, I am a woman. And when we ask him, why do you say that you're a woman? I feel like a woman. Then he starts moving like this. Then he starts doing the makeup. Then he goes to the salon. Then he puts on dresses. Then they go out into the lab and they start injecting themselves with those hormones to grow breasts. For a women who want to transition into men, they grow beards. Because it's a lost generation. It doesn't know who they are. They have no frame of reference. No one has ever told them that you are a man. No one told them who they are. Now it's upon them ignorantly to find out who they are. Ignorantly. Or they were raised with another fool who told them you can be whatever you want to be. Their parents who have told their children you can be whatever you want to be. So an idiot is a child to another idiot. Is a mother.
No wonder when the Bible tells us to obey parents, it says obey their instructions in the Lord.
A standard. There must be a standard. Someone read me these verses very quickly, and then I pause. Timothy 4:12. 1 Timothy 4:12. 2 Timothy 2:2. Titus 2:3.
Titus 2:3.
Okay. So who is in 2 Timothy 2:2?
2 Timothy 2:2.
1 Timothy 4:2. 4:12.
1 Timothy 4:12.
Okay.
Can I go?
You start. 1 Timothy 4:12.
It says, don't let anyone think less of you because you are young. Be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity.
Now there's a parent there talking to his son. Do you hear what he's telling him? What do we tell our children? Because that's the next generation. I was so touched when Tom told me that he had a meeting with his boys. And he had to have them a very difficult conversation. The conversation was not, do not have sex. No, the conversation was, what do you know about sex? And I am not here to fight you not to have sex, because I am no longer in charge. The youngest of you is 18. The rest of you are above 20. Let's talk about sex. What was that parent doing?
He was providing guidance.
And preparing the next generation.
Yes.
And then he even went further and asked the boys, do you know something about my sex life? That is a parent. Do you have questions?
And they
Or can I provide information? And then you guys start thinking about it. This has been my journey of sex. That is the father.
I actually told them one incident in 2017, 2018.
Yes.
A woman called me, told me she has my son of 23 years. I told them about that.
A generation. Do we understand the cost? Women, are you talking to your daughters? Okay, you who is mothering a girl, what do you know about men? Because your girl is dealing with men now. Someone was in a conversation with her daughter, and her daughter had the audacity to tell her that, Mom, I don't know which kind of man you are talking about, but let me tell you, the men I've met. And it was then that the mother understood that the version she was giving her daughter of men was a version of two men. Her father, who serves as the grandfather to her daughter, and her husband. Meanwhile, the girl had gone on 16 dates with different men.
The girl was more informed about men.
The girl was more informed
than the mother.
And all the time the mother said, Katinga boraba chitao, like you see your father. In fact, for me, I was blessed because your father is not different from my father.
And
so men are like that.
Frame of reference.
The frame of reference is that scope.
And the girl was like, I'm surprised.
How are we going to prepare a future generation if we know nothing about the future? We are not visionaries. We cannot envision. So who is in Timothy 2:2? 2:2.
The things which you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit the same to faithful men.
Now let me ask you,
who will be able to teach others also.
Can your children say that, can you tell your child that the things that you have heard from me? Because some of us, we've not heard anything from our parents. My mother taught me 3 things. And those 3 things she taught me were almost in parables. When I grew up, I started interpreting the wisdom of this old woman. Number 1, worship the God of Rwanda. Number 2, anything you want to know in this world has been written. So read, read, read. Number 3, be aware of food, because all the people that you see fighting are fighting for food. 3 lessons I got from my mother. 3 lessons. In essence, she was telling me, you cannot live in this world without God. Number 2, knowledge is power. Number 3, be aware of greed. That's what my mother told me. What did your mother tell you? What did your father tell you?
You are a boy who won't get anything like girls do.
That's what your father told you. You are a boy. You won't get anything like girls do. In other words, you have to hustle. But there are people in this world who have nothing whatsoever.
Whose mothers told them, you demon, you will see.
Hey.
And we are in a generation like that. You sit with someone, and they don't know anything. We used to be in school and you have to deal with the emotions of your friend. They can't deal with anything. You graduated and he's always calling you. He's always calling you. So what do you think? What should I do? He doesn't want to hear you. He wants you to tell him what to do. He's helpless. And if you don't tell him what to do, he will stay. Don't you have those friends? They are always calling you about anything and everything. And the reason they are suffering is because other people did not tell them what to do. Now, you listen to that thing. The things that I've told you, what did your parent tell you? What is your reference point? You also tell them to others. That is what I was telling this boy who has standards. I told him, even your children will be shaking heads if you don't up your head, your game. Has someone read Titus?
Titus 2.
Psalms 105:5. I want to read this verse.
Titus 2.
2:3-5. Who is in Psalm 105:5? Titus, go.
Beat the older women.
What?
Beat the older women.
Beat the older 105:5.
Beat the older women likewise to
Yes.
be reverent
Yes.
in behavior, not to be slanderous or slaves to drink. They are to teach what is good, and so train the young women to love their husbands and children.
It is the responsibility of the older women to train and teach the young women. But even these girls, they sit with older women and they have nothing to correct.
Actually, the young women now are singers of the older women on the internet.
Do you see the generation that we are in?
The older women be like,
Old women.
The older women have no content. But it is the older women to train these girls. Why are these girls so useless? It is because the older women are more useless. There's nothing. Can you imagine you marry someone and they don't know how to cook? Yes. And you have to look for someone to teach your wife to cook. But the wife has parents. Who is in Psalms 105:5?
Remember the wonders he has performed, his miracles, and the rulings he has given.
Now, let me ask you. You so-called believers, when you are in trouble, do you have stories of the experience of your parents with this God? And then you can say that since my father went through this, I will also go through this, because we serve a living God in our family. Do you remember any miracle in your family? Some of you were raised by parents who told them that whatever was done, it was because of their might. And now you have to compare yourself with your mighty father. Your father never told you that I am weak. He never disclosed that to you, that you, as a man, you have to struggle with some things. It is okay to struggle. All your father told you is not to cry. But there's another father who told his son that men cry. The only thing they don't do, they don't cry in the public. Did your father teach you how to cry? You told him a man doesn't cry. But your father was ignorant. Don't men have tear glands? But because your father was ignorant, He forbid you from crying. And now instead of crying, you are making others cry. Because an ignorant generation told you not to cry, but to make others cry. Do you guys understand? The ignorant generation. Let me just read this, only one verse and I wind up with that. Psalm 78, verse 6. But read from verse 5. 78, from verse 5.
It says, for he issued his laws to Jacob, he gave his instructions to Israel. He commanded our ancestors to teach them to their children.
We are commanded to teach the next generation, to shape. The present generation can only refer to the past generation, but the past generation must shape the next generation. That is our responsibility. Our responsibility is to shape the next generation. We are to pattern our children, our friends, against the next generation. We cannot afford to leave our children to these tablets. We have exposed the next generation to social media. It is now social media informing. Social media has got aunties. It has got marriage counselors
who are unmarried.
Who are unmarried. It has got pastors. There is a social media god.
Marriage counselors who are unmarried, have no intention to marry, have never gotten married.
Yes, and they are telling our children what family is. What family is. What marriage is. What business is. What career is. Who is shaping this next generation? Okay, who has shaped this generation? Why are we behaving like we behave? Who is telling you what to do and how to do it and why? Because the problem is having one ignorant generation shaping another generation, and we expect that generation. The key text today says, and all that generation also were gathered to their father. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord, neither the works and the miracles he had done for Israel. And the generation was in place. You people, there are some of us who have found ourselves here. You have heard about this whole thing of planned kids. A planned child is one who has been prepared for the world that he has found in himself. A planned child is not one who has what to use. Did you hear that? No, that's not a planned. A planned child is not a child with the materialistic needs. No. A planned child is a prepared child to face the challenges by himself or herself. That is who a planned child is. A planned child is not one who has food cooked for them. A planned child is one who knows how to cook that food and to get that food. Amen. That is how you prepare a generation. You are not planned if everything you have was given to you. Do you understand? You are not planned. You are not a planned child because you are the son of the king. No. You are a planned child if you know how to get that throne and bring it into your clan. Are you guys following? We have thrones here and kings and lineages. A planned child is one who is going to fix himself into that lineage. Not the one who is going to take over after the death. Okay, before you take over the throne of your father, how did your father get that throne? Do you know how? With the means of your father, can you get the throne by yourself? Or you are waiting to be given the throne? Have a nice day.